The title of her book is self-explanatory. This Common Secret, My Journey as an Abortion Doctor. Dr. Susan Wicklund's worked in the field of reproductive health for more than 2 decades. Earlier this year, she opened the Mountain Country Women's Clinic in Livingston, Montana. Talk a bit about who comes to your clinic. Who are your clients?
Women, first of all, and women from every walk of life. It doesn't matter what a woman's social background is, what her education level is, and in this instance, even where she lives. If it's anywhere in the Pacific Northwest, it seems, I have patients that coming from all over the area. It's women who have unintended pregnancies, or pregnancies that have caused other problems to rise for them. Maybe it's a woman who's diabetic, and the diabetes becomes very brittle, and she understands how sick she may get with the pregnancy and chooses to end the pregnancy.
We hear a lot about, well, if women were just better at contraception, if they just made fewer mistakes, there would be fewer abortions. Do you believe it?
Well, first of all, it takes 2 people to get pregnant. It takes the man and the woman, and so we need to put some responsibility there as well. But there is no form of birth control that's perfect. And the only thing that's perfect, I tell my patients repeatedly, are their intentions. Nothing else is foolproof. And so many of the women who come to me have been using some form of birth control. Even if they're using it perfectly, it still fails.
Give us an example of somebody that came recently.
One of the patients that I've had in the last number of weeks is a woman who has gotten pregnant 4 times, all 4 times on some method of birth control. 2 of those pregnancies she's now ended, and 2 she's carried to full term. She was beside herself. She's only 26 years old, and said she can't find a single physician who's willing to do a tubal ligation. She's done having children. She doesn't want any more children. She's got 2. She feels that's all she can be responsible for, that she can care for, and yet she keeps getting pregnant on other forms of birth control. Many physicians will not do a tubal ligation on a woman until she's at least 30 and had 2 children, or whatever circumstances are, but at least 30 years old, which is ludicrous. And here I'd like to say what Dr. Tiller used to say over and over again, is you got to trust women. Trust women to understand what they need and believe them, and listen to the heart of a woman and go from there. So what is this woman supposed to do? I mean, she's trying birth control pills. She's tried an IUD. She's tried all these different methods that are supposed to be 97% effective, and she's one of them that falls through the cracks.
But there are women at home saying, well, I never go pregnant by accident. If I was able to stop this happening, well, she's just clearly doing something wrong.
That's not right. That's just clearly not right. We have patients who've had, maybe it's their first pregnancy. I've had patients who've come in the door, 16, 17 years old, who've been with a man who said, well, you can't get pregnant the first time you have sex, which is clearly not true. So many different circumstances.
Talk about the sorts of people that Dr. Tiller would treat. He was one of the last clinics in the country that helped women in the last trimester of their pregnancy. Why did people go to his clinic, and what happens to those women now?
Well, there are a few other physicians that are coming forward that will probably continue to take care of those women, thank goodness, although that's going to be spread out. But many of the women that came to see Dr. Tiller were women who had very tragic circumstances, carrying fetuses that had severe abnormalities. And so, that wasn't discovered until they were 25, 26, 28 weeks pregnant, with, part of a brain, with no kidneys, with chromosomal abnormalities, something where they really did not want to carry that pregnancy to term and then have the baby die shortly after birth. Sometimes it was women that had severe medical problems of their own, whether it was mental problems or physical problems. And there was always a very good assessment done. I mean, not everybody who walked into Dr. Tiller's clinic was able to get an abortion.
How did you get into this, doing this yourself?
Oh boy. Well, first of all, going way back in my early 20s, I had an abortion that was a very brutal experience by a physician who was not careful, and by a staff that didn't explain things. Thank goodness that happens rarely, if ever, anymore, thanks to a very wonderful network of abortion providers around this country. But it was an experience that I've never regretted having the abortion. I'm sorry that I went into that clinic. And then ended up later having a child, and was at 26 years old. I was a single mom with a 3-year-old, living in very difficult situation and decided I wanted to be a doctor. I had been involved in midwifery things and childbirth education programs, and decided to go to college. And as I finished college and then medical school, was insistent that I learn how to do abortions. I wanted to be able to provide them for my own patients. And so I went to a program that did allow me to learn how to do abortions, and then went back to work in my hometown as a general practice. It was in northern Wisconsin, a little town in northern Wisconsin. And when I arrived there, the physician who'd been there for years, many, many years, had been doing abortions illegally, calling them a D and C, a dilation and curettage, and doing them for women who'd been coming up from Minneapolis, St. Paul, and from the area, brought in by a religious group, mostly ministers actually, who'd brought women to safe place, and they knew that this physician was safe. But when I came and started working, abortion was legal. I'd been trained, and I said, well, I'm going to keep doing what he's been doing for the patients that come to us. And the hospital board met and said, absolutely not. Only because no one had used the word abortion before. It wasn't open, and I was going to be open and legal with it.